All right, Andrew, it's a pleasure to have you on the podcast today. How you doing?
Yeah, very good, thank you. Yes, and it's really good to see you as well af-
Yeah,
after all these years.
yeah, yes. I'm really grateful to have you on the podcast. And you're my ex like RE teacher from my school, and you're a really great teacher, and I really enjoyed your lessons, and it's great to reconnect with you. And I just kind of thought I'd start off by we're going to talk. You might want to talk about like success and fulfillment, and life and your experiences, and you're also, an author of a book that you've recently written as well. So I just thought we kind of start off with, like these like success and fulfillment as well.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. So it is interesting that when I mean, I've been teaching in this school 15 years, and so I've seen the whole vista really of experience and progress and attainment really, and I think there are people that stand out over that period of time, and it's not necessarily for the results that they get; it's for the attitude that they demonstrate. And I'm not saying this because we're doing this podcast and it's
No.
a bit of a suck up session, but it was genuine. And when I talk about pupils who need to have something to aspire to, I talk about people like yourself who were predicted a certain grade and got the right attitude and the right approach and listened and applied, and come out with 3 grades higher than what the predicted grade was. And there was a few over the years that I really stand out to me, and I see that as a real foundation to success. And where you have totally the opposite, where people drift, they don't really know what they're going to do, and even having a opportunity to try some things out and at least have a go. I applaud that sort of mentality. I'm not quite so sure if young people at 16 years of age really know what they want to achieve in life. um,
Mm.
they check the exams and they look at where they want to go A levels and possibly university. But ultimately, I mean, I look at my life and I wasn't fully sure where I wanted to go at that stage. Yet we're pushing them forward to make all of these decisions. But it's the thing that's really stuck out to me over the years is that mentality of, well, I'm going to have a go at something and I'm going to apply myself. And this might not be my ultimate destiny, but at least I'm going to give it a shot and, another string to my bow, etc. So I was really sort of intrigued when I saw what you was doing with the podcasts and things like that, because to me that was just an extension of what I'd seen in the classroom and seen your mentality around school, going from probably more of a difficult start in the earlier part of school life to coming out with results. I mean, I can only talk from what I taught with regards to RE, and I am quite chuffed that you were successful with that. So yeah.
Yeah. No,
So sorry.
no, I was gonna say, yeah, I mean, like I really, I feel, I when I was in your lessons, like I really felt like, you cared, and, I just felt like you had that good rapport with the pupils. And when I was there, I just really liked and I was interested in that topic. And I think, you know, you just kind of you was able to have that space for people to effectively learn, and you was open.
Yeah.
And, I'm really grateful for that. And yeah, my focus wasn't really there until like the last couple of years in school. And, I just really like your teaching and, how you are as a person. And I think it's great. And, I'm grateful for that.
Yeah, yeah. And I've been thinking about success quite a lot recently again because of some things that I'm involved with. Prior to teaching, I was, as you know, a church minister. So I went through training and development in leading a church. And I remember my mentor years ago giving me possibly one of the top 2 pieces of advice that I've ever been given. And he gave me this advice on the back of me being incredibly driven. And when I'm saying driven, I mean that had a knock-on effect on both my home life with regards to the expectations that I was putting on my wife in our marriage and the time that she was giving to the things that we was involved with, um, but on volunteers in the church and members of the church. I look back now and I think, wow, did I really put those expectations on people with regards to the time that they were giving voluntarily?
Mm.
The fuel behind it was this feeling of being driven to succeed. You know, you would go to leaders meetings and leaders conferences, and in those days the big question was, so how many you've got? How many did you get on the Sunday morning? And you know, what's this like in the church? And it was all the questions were driven to success, and you could feel the pressure to perform, and you could feel the pressure to come up with the goods so that your church looked great and you look great. And I remember one guy saying to me once, quite a senior guy within the denomination that I was a part of, and he said, Andrew, he says, if it's not worked out in 2 years, he says, then just jack it in. And so in my mind, I'm going, that's 24 months away. How are we going to do that? And so I had that pressure. And so you try schemes, you try the latest idea, you jump on this bandwagon and that bandwagon and put all of these expectations and demands in front of people because you're trying to meet the demands of other people that think that your success is linked into whatever. So I was living with this. And to be honest with you, I look, 15, 16, 17 years ago, I must have been an absolute nightmare to be around. Because whilst it affects your personality, you live, breathe and sleep this stuff. And it's totally the opposite of what you should be doing, to be honest with you. It's not God, for me, it wasn't godly character.
Mm.
So I remember sitting down with my mentor. My mentor was in his 70s, and he led churches of 2,000-3,000. He'd lived it. He got the t-shirt. He knew where it was at. And I used to go, one of those people that you go and sit for half an hour, and you just get wisdom. You just listen. It's just wisdom, 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 and you come away thinking, that was a breath of fresh air. He's not said much for very long, but what he said, I will chew on that for months. And so we were talking about all of this, and he said to me, listen, he says, this is what I need to say to you. You've not been called to be successful. You've been called to be fulfilled. He said,
Mm.
success is determined by so many things. Some of those are totally out of your hands. But fulfillment is an internal thing with you. And he says, you've got to come to that internal place that you feel fulfilled in what you are doing, and you leave the rest, in our situation, being Christians, it was you leave the rest in God's hands. And it was like he got one of those big wheels and just turned the pressure valve. And I just sat there going, there's all this pressure just released from me. And I remember I had to do a lot of internalizing about how in practice that actually worked. But for somebody senior like that, and somebody that I trusted and respected, to come to me and say that literally liberated my thinking. That actually no. So I mean, we're in the process now of planting a church again and doing it very, very differently. And I have to say, 15, 16 years on, I feel zero pressure to perform. I don't feel anything negative about being driven to succeed. We're just faithfully doing what we believe we should be doing. And most of that is building a sense of community, a sense of family, reaching out to people who are marginalized, and those who are lonely, those who are hurting, those who are abused, and a load of people who haven't got the major issues. And we're just building all of that into a family. But in the whole process, even though at times it can be busy, I don't feel driven at all. I don't feel that I can go to a leaders meeting and the one question is going to be, how many did you get on Sunday? How many turned up on Wednesday night on Zoom? Because of course everything's done on Zoom. And I don't hear those questions anymore. And secondly, I don't feel that somebody's going to ask me that question, or that I need to perform with that, and that is just so liberating
Mm.
in so many ways.
Yeah, no, I think it's really powerful, what you mentioned, and like you said, with the church and like the pressures that come with that. Like you said many years ago, and even now in society, in how we go into the world and how we live, and like you said, there's all this, um, like you said, you stressed out, and you had all these expectations on you and everything like that, and all these questions, and all these success results to me, and like you said, he spoke to that guy, and he said, that fulfillment, that inner fulfillment of why you're doing it is should be the main kind of driving force, isn't it? And
Yeah,
alleviates the pressure, and I think that's where people get it mixed up. They get it mixed around, and then, but it's like you get lots of people saying to you, this, like, not just in the church, but like in life, this is, what are you going to be? What are you going to do? University, college,
yeah,
and like you said, like 16 years old, like 15 years old, very small percentage of people know what they actually want to do before they even go out.
yeah. And we started it from an early age. And so when we look at the amount of mental health issues that we've got in society, I think this is a big factor. I mean, I'm at the moment dealing with year 11s who've been told no exams this year. And whilst on the one hand, it's a little bit of a gift that's been given by the government, because all they've got to produce is so many assessed pieces of work, and maybe they don't on the back of that feel the stress that previous year groups have. There is still that expectation that they have to perform, which is fair enough, because you've got to prove what you've learned, and your skills and your abilities. But if there's a normal year with GCSEs, we'd be feeling increasing pressure, both as staff and also with regards to the pupils. And so even at the testing of pupils at an early age feeds this mentality of you've got to succeed, you've got to succeed, you've got to succeed. And so it's all piled on all the way through their teenage life. I remember saying to my two, I'm not bothered if you don't get your A stars and your A's and your B's. I will be proud of you if you do the best that, excuse me, the best you
Mm-hmm.
possibly can be.
Mm,
I'm not going to push you, and I'm not going to drive you to get those higher levels if it's going to
mm,
cause you the stress and the anxiety
mm,
that it can do. And so society's fashioning from an early age, through testing and through the school system, that you've got to perform and you've got to succeed. And
mm,
I think there's something wrong in that is just really affecting people's mental health and is affecting society. And this is a good link into this. So the book that I wrote,
mm,
got released end of November, called Unwritten. So it basically tells the story of in the main tells the story of our journey through IVF and then into adoption,
mm,
uh, because I felt for felt for 15 years that I should write this book,
mm,
um, and spent most of lockdown writing it, putting it together. But
mm,
the reason I'm mentioning it is because when you're looking at driven to succeed, there are things in that book that really are very open and honest about what I was going through at the time of the IVF cycles,
mm,
that I'm not proud of.
mm,
I mean, really, I'm not proud of, and it's because of this drivenness to perform and to do what I was being expected to do. And I remember, I think it was the first IVF cycle. We'd been given a legacy of £86,000 to the church by the secretary who had passed away, and so we decided that we'd revamp the building,
mm,
because it was very chintzy, very pink, very very outdated. And so we decided we spend about 40 grand of this money on revamping the building. Some of it we did ourselves. So Lynn had just been implanted, and I remember the week of her implant, I spent something like 65 hours in the church building doing the decorating and the revamping. She's at home, um, laid on her back, worrying as to whether she was going to be pregnant or not, feeling that emotional turmoil. And I'm in the church building painting and setting things up. The second IVF that failed, I'd been asked to go and do some seminars at big denominational conference in Wales. And what I would have done now is said, no, sorry, my wife's in a mess. I can't come. Driven this again, pushing me forward. Great opportunity. Gonna, it's a leaders conference. Gonna go and do these 2 seminars on revamping church and making it a very 21st century expression that's attractive to people. Couldn't miss that opportunity. I remember the day before in being in absolute turmoil because I thought she was having a nervous breakdown.
Mm.
Genuinely thought she was losing it. She was so distraught, and she kept saying to me, no, go, I'll be fine. And then there was tears, and it's awful to think about now. And I went, to my absolute shame, I went to Wales and I did these seminars, and I stayed for the whole week. And she was completely isolated on her own. And that's shocking. It's shocking that you can be in the system and you can now allow yourself to be so mentally affected and driven by the desire to succeed that your relationships get screwed like that. And to me, that's not integrity. So in the whole process of integrity, I thought I lost some there. So I'm stood in front of 6, 7, 800 people doing a seminar, and my wife's in a mess at home. That's not integrity. The integrity should have been, you're at home with your wife. Let somebody else do that session.
Mm.
But you learn. With hindsight, it's a great thing, and hopefully through those experiences, both the wisdom that's spoken to you and the way that we think that through and process it, we hopefully come to a place where we don't do that again. My advice has always been to younger leaders that I'm in touch with and I talk with, please listen to wisdom. Don't throw wisdom to one side, because I wish I'd listened to these guys who were older than me and more experienced than me, because it would have saved me a lot of pain, a lot of heartache, I think.
Mm. Yeah, no, it's definitely like a driving force, isn't it? That will and drive to succeed. And I think, it's how you apply that, isn't it? And how you balance that out. I think it's great that people, want to succeed, but then, like, don't overlook, your life and, like you said, your family, these things in between.
Yeah.
Because some people, like as you said, it's almost like they've got the blinkers on and just get into that tunnel driven drive.
Yeah.
And it's like hardwired, isn't it? Like as you said, from an early age, and from what you was experiencing, you had probably kind of had the blinkers on. You got just so focused and driven, and
Yeah.
a lot of that probably as well. When you are part of something like that, or you're part of corporations or organizations, you've got to please the people above, haven't you? There's like a system. You don't want to let people down. There's so many things that interconnect with it,
Yeah.
and people can kind of be blind to it, and it can cost. I mean, you're still with your partner and everything, and that's great. And some people, it can go the other way. And I think, like as you mentioned, it's kind of with pupils as well, and testing and grades, and like it is a system. But as you mentioned to your kids, just do the best that you can, and it's okay if you don't get an A star or whatever. And I think so many people and kids. I mean, I remember when I did my exams at the school,
Yeah.
and I remember looking at some people's feet, and their feet for the hour and a half or an hour was like that on the floor. And I
Yeah.
remember thinking to myself, that can't be right. And
No.
my feet were on the ground, but I was like,
Yeah, you see it. I've walked down the roads when we used to be able to invigilate, and the stress that pupils are feeling. It's like a scene from Riverdance. You expect Michael Flatley to come running across the front of the hall. But yeah, that's not good. And the other thing is how we measure success predominantly in society, but very often by money and material things. Um, but I mean, is success all about that? I think um, some would say, "Oh, I'm being really lame here," because actually I want to succeed. And I want the big car, and I want the big house, and I want the flashy job. But I've come across people over the years, and they've had all of that, and the kids have been doing drugs. They've been pregnant before they're legally supposed to. They've left home at an early age and ended up becoming homeless. I mean, the whole catalogue of things that you can think of, those things happened, and they've had absolutely everything that they could think of because of their successful family that they've been a part of. And then you can look at others that you wouldn't call successful, but they are the most together, cohesive, loving, committed, stable, normal family that you could wish to be a part of. Well, what's success? I suppose it depends how you want to measure and how you want to judge your success. And I think my mind has always been more towards the first. I look at if I take my teaching, what to me makes me a successful teacher. Yeah, I like to have the grades. I still have the record of leading a year group that got the best grades that Chilwell ever had in its history. So I'll wear that badge with pride. But that's not really the be all and end all for me. Success for me is that I have a cohort that leave in year 11 that are well-rounded, polite, tolerant, supportive, committed to each other, cohesive, good members of society. I remember the first year group that I had, I took over from Danny Williams. Do you remember Danny?
Yeah.
So I learned a few things from him. And so they said in the interview for head of year, give us your vision. What's your vision for the year group? And I said, I want to replicate with a whole cohort what I did with my tutor group. I've only ever had one tutor group because I took them through for 5 years and then moved on to head of year. And that tutor group was like a family. There was no clickiness. Any friction was dealt with quickly and maturely. We had fun together, played hard, and just a great bunch of young people that you're so proud to see where they got to. The level of cohesion that there was with that group. Because sometimes you get a very fractured, factious year group, and you're dealing with the fallout of that all of the time. It wasn't like that with that tutor group. And I said, I want to replicate as much as possible with a whole cohort, because I believe it's possible. I had that very clear vision. I believe it's possible to do that. And I want to prove that it can be done. I remember we got to the end of year 10 with them. And one of my tutor team, remember Dan Trembeth? Was he there when you was there?
Yes, yeah.
So Dan was moving on to, he was moving abroad, and he came up to me. I was one of the last people that he said goodbye to, and he had tears in his eyes, and he says, what was the vision you put out 4 years ago? And I was a bit, no idea what you're talking about, Dan. And so he says, you know what you said about your vision for the year group? I went, oh yeah. And he threw his arms around me. He says, we've done it. We've done it. You've achieved what you set out to achieve. And sure, they got the best results that we've ever had in the school. But I looked at them and I was more proud successfully of the people that they become and how they were together as a group of young people. So, some would say, oh, well, no, the success is in the results. But the way I'm wired is the success is who they're becoming. And that, I think, generated more fulfillment with me than actual results. And so I think it's relative. I think it's relative to what you want to achieve and the sort of person that you are. I mean, I'm pastoral, always have been. and yet some people are very results driven.
mm,
They would get more of a buzz out of that level of success. But for me, it's been about who people are becoming,
mm,
because that to be honest with you, that's the crux of the Christian message. It's not what you do, it's who
mm.
you are becoming, and so that fits quite well with me.
Yeah. No, I love that, and I think that that's really powerful, isn't it? And I think, like as you said, seeing people develop and seeing who they're kind of molding into and developing and learning and growing, it's so rewarding to see that, and it being in that role in place just to play that part, to help those people to do that. And you said like fulfillment, success, it's different for each person, isn't it? But I think like, you know, you know people who've had all, certain flashy stuff and they're not happy and they've had certain things happen. And I think like you said as well, like you've got to be happy in what you're doing, and there's a deeper underlying message to what you want as success. And if you're attaching that to certain things and that's it, then it's not going to really last. There's got to be a deep driving force. And like, I want to do well in life and stuff like that, and I want to be, successful. But it's not an attachment to, say, an item or something like that. It's, as you said, it's got to have that deeper driving force. You wanted to help your year group and to help students and people to progress and to be okay. And I think, as you mentioned, with friction and like school can be difficult, and you're not always going to get on with people. So to be able to to put good morals in place where students can take that forward into life, it's so important, isn't it? And
Yeah,
we had several chats where some people do and some people don't. And there's a lot of kind of contributing factors that I think affect pupils. So I mean, having like the right teacher, the right kind of role model they can look up to.
yeah,
Um, like I was happy that we could have chats when I was at school and stuff like that. And for some kids, they don't have that, and it really does like break the ice.
yeah, yeah. Yeah, I think if you can find that member of staff or several members of staff that you really feel that they believe in you, that makes a massive difference. And you're not going to. Every member of staff would say that they do, but in reality, we all know that. Not
Mm,
sure if that actually works in reality, because people do have their ideas about certain pupils, and they don't
mm.
necessarily. I'm not talking about the school I'm in, by the way, just
Yeah.
anybody else
No,
watch this.
no, 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 of course.
um, but you just know that that does happen. But the difference I always see with pupils is that when they make that connection with a member of staff, with a teacher, um, that they trust and that they build up that respect for, makes a massive difference. And I think one of the big things about that year group, the first year group that I had, was that they knew, and this is going to sound very twee and almost a bit cliche, but they knew that I would walk over hot coals for them. They knew that I would. I used to say to them, "Look, I take bullets for you lot. I take verbal bullets. I stand in front of staff that are wanting to fire stuff in your direction because I can see who you can become. I can see the potential in you. I also take into account some of the struggles that you're having, and I'm prepared to give grace there, as a down deposit for where a down payment for where you're gonna get to. And I think over time, when a group of pupils, a group of young people, I move outside of school because I deal with young people as well, outside of the school context. Why do a group of 5, 6, 7 lads go and have a pint with a 54-year-old down at a pub, and they invite me to go on a regular basis, and they just want to sit and chat? I think it's because that they sense that level of belief that somebody has in them, and maybe some of them haven't got the father figures and the role models that they really want, and maybe they see something in you that really helps them with that, and in a supportive way. but makes such a difference to have those people around you. And I always encourage, um, especially younger teachers that come to, they asked me to do a pastoral session once for NQTs, newly qualified teachers, get them in the conference room and do a session on, on pastoral. And the first thing I said to them was, listen, this is not going to be textbook. This is not going to be what they'll teach you in university. I'm going to teach you how to do pastoral the Widdowson way. And so some of it's going to be very unconventional, but I know it works because it's worked with a tutor group, it's worked with a whole year group. And you can see some of their responses to things I would say, like, what is he saying here? But, I know it works. I laughed with that previous year group. I cried with that previous year group. We had to deal with a significant tragedy of a young lad who took his life just as they were doing their exams, and that was very hard to have to deal with. But because you'd have 4 years of building this into them, they did well and still produced the best results that the school have ever had. Tragedy.
Yeah,
Yeah,
that's great.
and to me that's the focus. You can do all the other success stuff, but I think this is a desperate need in society. There needs to be a coming back to looking at what it is to be a good person, what it is to be, to be a well-rounded person who commands respect and lives as a good citizen and it gets on with people, and all that stuff which we've lost because of the drive in society to be the best that you can be. And I think where it's at. The title of the book that I keep coming back to this, don't I?
It's good. It's all right.
Keep plugging it. We got a box of 100 of these. Sat gathering dust. Is unwritten. So and when we were going through the IVF, the thing that really helped us was Natasha Bennyfield's song, "The Rest Is Still Unwritten." That was coming on the radio all the time, and because it talks about looking at the blank page before you, and the final sentence in the song is, "The rest is still unwritten." And we just felt that, irrespective of what we were going through, that the story wasn't over. That there was more to write in our lives, irrespective of what the results of the IVF were and what the doctors had said and all that sort of stuff. And even when we adopted and went through that whole process, there was still a journey to undertake. And so you really, the crux of the book, while it talks about the difficulties of IVF and the joys of adoption, the contrast is so different between, and I'm just saying that because I wrote it, but I've had feedback from people who said it literally was like that. 1 minute you're at a high, and then the next minute you're absolutely rock bottom. And I said, well, great, that's come across, because that is literally the journey you go on with infertility treatment. But in that whole process of learning both how, sorry, let me say it again. The adoption and IVF really form a framework in which to talk about the struggles and the difficulties of life. The big part of the book as well, and this is helpful for anybody, not just people who have been through issues and they're looking at adopting. The bigger thing here is some of the lessons that we learned in the process, the lessons that we learned, the journey that we went on, both within ourselves and within interactions with other people, and with each other as well. And so it's a book really that will help anybody who's really been through a really difficult time, or knows people that are going through a really difficult time, because hopefully it will help people to empathize, and how to support yourself, about how to deal with your emotions, because I found in the whole process, men very often are there they end up supporting their wives, And so what we do is we bury our feelings, we bury our emotions, because I've got to be there for my partner. And then something else happens, and she's in a mess. So I'm feeling it still, but I'll bury that as well. And then you go through a second phase of IVF, and that fails. She's in turmoil. I bury my feelings, the whole feeling of loss that you feel, even though there was no baby created, you still feel that sense of loss and disappointment. You bury it, and you go through three sessions of IVF, and all you've done all the way through is support the other person, and you as the guy is there.
Mm.
Where are my emotions? Where, who actually am I? Because you've buried it so deep, you don't actually know how to dig it out again. And I remember I went through probably a 2-year period where I can't actually remember laughing. The joy had just gone from me, and I'm totally the opposite. I love banter.
Yeah, you do.
I thrive on it. And thank God, it had just affected my personality. So I deal with things like that. What do you do when your joy's gone? What do you do when you've buried your emotion so much because you have supported the other person so much? How do you do how do you get some healing in that whole process, and some release, so that
Mm.
we don't completely blow up? We had to deal with very, very well-meaning people.
Mm.
They didn't have a clue, and they ended up saying, even family members, they didn't have a clue. They were so unhelpful. Uh,
Mm.
I remember my wife talking to my dad about how she was feeling, and she was distraught. She was crying on the phone. His response was, "Well, that's just life, isn't it? These things happen." I think, oh, and
Oh,
normally he's totally the opposite, but somehow in that situation he'd said the wrong thing, and we had to learn how to deal with people, that want to say the right thing, but they don't say the right thing,
mm.
because they really don't know what to say. Because unless you've
Yeah.
walked in somebody's shoes, you don't know, do you?
No, that's it. And I think, like, that kind of process and that journey, you mentioned that kind of like diagram, like, is up and down. And that's kind of like, how life is, isn't it? Like it is, like a bit like that at times. And it's never one straight road, is, when you come back to success,
Yeah,
excuse me, people just think it's, start here and then it's an uphill
yeah,
trajectory. And it's like, there's all these pitfalls in between, something happens, and I think, going through that process, you're going to encounter all that in between. And, people sometimes lack empathy. They don't really know what empathy is, or they just don't know how to respond, or don't know because they've not been in there, or they can't, take a different view from it. And they just might say something that is negative or critical, but they don't mean it to be negative or critical. It's just whatever comes to them. And I think it's difficult, isn't it? To push through that, and to find a way out and through that. But I think, like, your book, you know, I'll definitely have to read it. It sounds, like there's a lot of wisdom in there. And I think it's great how you've been able to kind of capsulate that into the book, and to put your experience into it, to provide, because you're always providing value to other people,
yeah,
and they can relate to parts of it, especially if they've been through that,
yeah,
or difficult times in their life. There's all these kind of like silver linings
yeah,
from these experiences, isn't there?
yeah. The principles are transferable to whatever difficulties you find in life. So I use the story of Mary and Joseph. And imagine 12-year-old young woman who has just come to childbearing age, uh, and gets it announced that she's pregnant. She's betrothed to Joseph. She thought she'd got her life all sewn up, and suddenly this announcement, that she's pregnant, and she's never slept with a guy. And then you've got Joseph, who's probably well into his 20s. Culturally, that was the norm. And he got it all together. He'd saved up. He was doing the house up, and he was ready a year later to welcome Mary into the home. And suddenly, oh, by the way, Mary's pregnant. She comes back
Mm.
from visiting the cousin, and she's got the bump there. And so I use this phrase, but I used a bit of license here to talk about they're in this situation, and both of them have this phrase going through their mind, but it wasn't meant to be like this. And we can have in life so many times and things come across our path where we sit there and go, but it wasn't meant to be like this. And I talk about when we sat on the edge of the bed waiting for the consultant to come, having had the laparoscopy to check the fallopian tubes to see whether they were blocked, and then being told that they were not just blocked, they were deformed and probably have been since birth, and therefore you can't have children naturally. And that phrase it comes to you, but it wasn't meant to be like this. We should have now had those tubes unblocked. We should be able to go and actually create a baby. But we've been told, no, the only way you're going to get it is through IVF now, if you're lucky, because there's about a 23% chance at your age. But it wasn't meant to be like that. So how do you handle that? How do you deal with that? That level of disappointment that comes in life. And that's transferable. That's not just about IVF. That's a transferable principle, really. How do you pick yourself up again?
Yeah, I think that's really relatable to the kind of current situation with COVID. 'Cause I mean, there's so many people who've been unemployed, lost their jobs. So many people where it's just kind of ripped through, society and a lot of jobs. I mean, I spoke to a lot of people who've been on the podcast who've, are thriving in this time and the business is doing really well. And there's like a spectrum almost where people are doing really well and there's people who really aren't doing it really well. People are doing okay.
Yeah.
And it's like you said, how do you pick yourself up? Because a lot of people right now think, it's not supposed to be like this, not supposed to be in a lockdown, not supposed to, X, Y, Z.
Yeah.
So I think a lot of people can relate to this, to this situation.
Yeah.
And it's how you react, supposedly, how you react to that and what you do with that.
Yeah. And coming to the place as well that you don't necessarily have all the answers. I to this day I don't know why we were in a position of being infertile. And you get the anger, you get the disappointment, you get the pain that you have to process, but you can't live like that for the rest of your life. You have to come to a position where you move on from that and you process it, and you may not have all of the answers. You might not have them. And I just, I had to work through that. I mean, I went through a crisis of faith. I was a church minister, and I was standing there dedicating babies, praying for them on a Sunday morning. My wife's at home in tears because she's just had a failed IVF. And I was like, God, you're having a laugh. It's like sick, sadistic joke going on here. I'm having to do this, coo, God bless the baby. My wife's destroyed, and I'm feeling inside. And so I remember saying I preached one Sunday morning, and when I was going through all this crisis, and I remember saying to the church, to be honest with you, I says, I'm not even sure I believe in God anymore. And and about 6 people get up and walk out. They were so offended. Because of course, you're not allowed to have these crises or talk about it. And
Sorry.
And God, what was I saying now? And in thoughts gone. Train of thought.
You said that, and 6 people walked out. And it was a crisis.
Yeah, it is. But you come through the other side of that, and the conclusion that I came to, this is where I was going. Feel like I'm in the classroom when I've gone at all sorts of tangents. Is that I look back now, and I'm happy with this. I'm comfortable with this. That I would never, ever, ever have met Thomas and Alicia. They'd never been a part of our lives. They'd never have brought the joy and the blessing and the happiness, and they'd have not had us, and we'd have not had them if we'd have had children naturally. And I wouldn't swap that now. I would not swap that for one little bit. And I think that in the book I talk about, all of this stuff is like a tapestry. So if you So if you turn a tapestry around, you see all the bits of cotton that have been put together to make the picture on the front, and it just looks a mess. You wouldn't display the back of a tapestry because it looks a mess. It's all intertwined. But you turn it round and you see the beautiful picture. And I think, I came to the conclusion that that's life. Life is very messy. Life is very intertwined. There's all sorts of strands and bits of string that all come together that when you look at it, you think that's a mess. That does not look good. But then you turn it over and you stand back and you see the beauty of the picture that's been created. And now that takes a certain way of thinking and a lot of processing to come to that place. But that certainly is where I rested, that that's just how life, and I'm not going to have the answers, and I've processed that now, and I'm cool with that.
That's it. And I think, that's a really kind of good way of looking at it. And I think, you've got to come for a lot of people, it might be very different, but you've got to like do that kind of work to kind of like get to that place and that perspective, isn't it? And it's a perspective, isn't it, of looking at things in that way? Because it's like, life, there's so many life experiences that happen in your life, or things might not happen the way you wanted to.
Yeah.
But then, as you mentioned, when you flip it around, you look at kind of how you are and what you're doing, or what's come from, like all these experiences, isn't it?
Yeah, and I think if you don't process this, you'll go crazy.
Yeah.
Yeah, you really will. And yeah, so if anybody's interested in that book, then it is on Amazon, unwritten, Andrew Widdowson, or somehow contact me on Facebook. I've got a stat load that I'd like to get out of my room.
Yeah. And like where can people connect with you on, like, do you have like a Facebook page? Because I remember you mentioning, like, where can people, if people are interested in joining the Zoom thing that you do for the online, or how can people contact you if they want to get involved in like the church side of things, and like
So
where can they get you?
So church side, our Facebook page, which is waterside .chilwell. And that has a lot of information on that. If people want to contact me personally, mesterwids@gmail.com, can get a hold of me that way. If it's anybody wants to have a chat about any of that, then please do. If you know people that are struggling with infertility or questions around that, or just are really going through a tough patch in life, then one of the things that I've really understood is that we need that one go-to person, that one trusted person, whoever that is. And some people haven't got it. We lost a young lad locally over the weekend for a similar sort of thing. They just struggled, and life was too much, and that's it. And it's such a shame. It's heartbreaking to hear these stories. So please get in touch, and I'd be happy to support in any sort of way.
Yeah, no, definitely. Like, it's been a pleasure having you on the podcast, Andrew, and it's great to connect with you again. And
Next
I think
time you are in Nottingham, you need to track us down.
Yeah,
we'll go and have one of those watered down pints at the marina.
Yeah, yeah, 2%.
I'm sure they take it straight out of the Trent.
Out of it. Yeah, wouldn't surprise me. No, definitely.
They'll be suing me.
Yeah. That's not true.
No.
Yeah, but no, it's great to connect with you, and I really appreciate you talking about the things that we touched base on, and I think it's great what you're doing, and I wish you all the best with your book. I wish you all the best with the church side of things. Yeah, it's really, really great, and I'll include all your details in the bio for people to access as well.
Yeah, great.
But yeah, have a great day, Andrew.
Good.
Take care.